Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Westside congregation. We're so happy to see you today. For those watching at home, thank you for your time. Our service today is based on principle number 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and principle 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, as well as source number 2, words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. And source number 6, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Our service this morning is brought to you through the help of Bram and Roxy Hept, our greeters, Dana Sanford, our sound master, Steve Poyani, who's videotaping the service, Stacy Debicki is our presenter today, and I'm Sherry Nopke, your worship associate. Some announcements. Today is International Peace Day, so the Peace and Justice Center in Albuquerque is having a celebration at 3 p.m. They're located on Silver near Harvard, and the Raging Grannies are going to be singing, and Judy Deutsch is one of the Raging Grannies, so go at 3. And then I want to talk for a minute about the Rio Rancho Feed the Kids project, which this congregation has partnered with this year. And what this group does is volunteers meet here on a monthly basis to assemble food packages, which are gallon-sized Ziploc bags that are stuffed full of non-perishable food, like canned ravioli and mac and cheese, applesauce. And then the food is delivered on a weekly basis to partnering schools who have identified students that are in food insecure situations. So these kids sometimes have little or maybe no food at all for the weekend. So these packages of food are really helpful. And I've been delivering food lately to Colinas del Norte Elementary School. And when I show up on Friday with the food, they're happy to see me and very appreciative of receiving the food. So it makes me feel like I did something good. And I would love to be able to find a volunteer from the congregation to be my backup. Just in case there's a Friday where I can't make it, it would be nice to have somebody else who could do this. And then it would be nice to offer you the chance to get involved with this project and just learn a little bit more about it. So if you're interested, you can talk to me after the service or email me, or you could email Nancy and she could forward it to me and I'll contact you. I'd be happy to tell you more about the whole process. And finally, our water communion today will be a little bit different. We'll not be saying where our water's coming from when we bring it up, mostly because it will make the flow for videotaping awkward with the camera looking at your backsides. So just bring your water. And now we invite Graham Hept to share her animal ministry moment with us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our pets provide unconditional love and support throughout our lives. Animals are natural negativity absorbers. When you feel sad or depressed, hold your pet and feel the warmth of its spirit. The positive energy and love you feel from your pet will reflect on you and help lift your spirit. Now this is a kitty, and he says, when I want extra treats, I hide and wait 10, maybe 15 minutes after mommy calls. When she's sufficiently frantic, I make my appearance. It works every time.
Please stand as you are able and join us in lighting our chalice. The words are found in your order of service or on the screen in front of you. Fire
and water, ancient opposites, sun and ocean, the cradle of life, dancing flame and dancing river, we invoke you together today as we kindle our chalice flame.
And please join in our aspirations found in your order of service.
Life is a gift. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Shalom.
Please be seated.
I invite you to get comfortable in your seats. Lean back and close your eyes if you so desire. As you listen to the words of We Are the Water Protectors, please think about your favorite places and the water that sustains them and us, and the beauty that brings us peace. What are you willing to do to protect that water? Water is the first medicine, Nokomis told me. We come from water. It nourished us inside our mother's body as it nourishes us here on Mother Earth. Water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins, runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land, spoil the water, poison plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. When my people first spoke of the black snake, they foretold that it wouldn't come for many, many years. Now the black snake is here. Its venom burns the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. Take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together to stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. It will not be easy. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, trees, rivers, lakes, the earth. We are all related. Tears like waterfalls stream down, tracks down my face, tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nokomis told me. Water is alive. Water remembers our ancestors who came before us, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life. I invite you now to rejoin us.
Set aside time to share our joys and concerns. If you're watching at home, please draw your personal candle close and light it as we light our last candle. First, Sandy has knee surgery Tuesday. Please send thoughts and prayers for a safe surgery and a quick recovery. And a joy from Laurel Anderson. Laurel Anderson's surgery went well. She's home recuperating and expects to see everyone next week. I guess this was a joy and a concern. Nan Porterfield's surgery was postponed. Keep her in your thoughts and prayers. And if anyone else has one, I'll bring the mic.
Yeah, I have a good bite on my house. I've had actually 3 bites on Friday, so it was kind of juggling, but one of them is coming through. I've got a counter offer in, should hear today or tomorrow, so everybody keep me in your thoughts.
You have a joy?
I have birthday with Crystal, and I have with Crystal and Bella. Yeah.
Cool.
It was Crystal's birthday.
Thank you.
I have a joy. A month ago, my first great-grandchild was born. He was a lovely, lovely little boy. And despite the fact that I have a lot of grandchildren, this was the first one who's come across with it.
Great.
I'd like to share a joy. Today is the first day of National Nanny Recognition Week. 23 years ago in May, I was one of the many nannies who marched on Capitol Hill to get this in place.
And we light one last candle for the joys and concerns we keep unspoken in our hearts. And we continue to light our red candle for all those who are victims of racial violence and injustice. So this morning, we celebrate our annual water communion in 4 parts. Part 1 is all too familiar to us here in the desert of New Mexico. It's our drought. If you drive across the Rio Grande or hike near it, you will sadly see more sandbars than water. Please join me in visualizing water once more flowing freely on its journey south. Water to bring life to gardens and to sustain the animals that call the bosque home. We add water to this bowl in the hope that our drought may be lessened. Part 2 is the water of transformation. The power of water has the ability to transform the world, from its tiniest drops eroding desert sandstone over centuries into amazing arches, mighty rivers carving deep canyons out of rock, and waterfalls that force the land to retreat. Moving water has the power to create energy, and calm water can bring peace to a chaotic mind. We add this water to honor the gift of water. Part 3 is the water of storms. As our earth and her waters continue to heat up, we continue to see more hurricanes, and sadly, we are seeing many more making landfall as Category 4 and 5. The areas most impacted by these storms are being hit several times a season, with little time between storms to see any recovery. The winds destroy homes and topple mighty trees. The rains and surging tides cause overwhelming flooding, power goes out for weeks, and people are left trying to find family members and shelter. As these storms move inland, they weaken and become tropical storms and depressions. They slow down, and the prolonged rainfall causes flooding and storms, spawn multiple tornadoes, once again unleashing the destructive power of wind. We add this water in compassion and empathy for all who have been through these destructive storms and still carry that trauma. And part 4 is the waters that sustain us. Our lives begin cradled in the amniotic fluid, the birthing waters inside our mothers. We are cushioned and protected until it's time to be born. We drink water to remain hydrated. We water our crops for the food we eat, and many of us seek out water to find moments of peace. We have backyard fountains or ponds. We spend time at lakes. We hike near rivers, and we go to ocean beaches to smell the salty air and to hear the sound of waves. We fish, we swim, and we play in water. It refreshes us. We now invite you to come forward using the center aisle to share your own water, or use some of the water provided to commemorate recent trips or to symbolize where you hope to go when we are once again safe to travel. And go ahead. After you have shared your water, please take a moment to look at the pictures that you passed by on your way back using the side aisles. Please feel free to quietly look at the pictures as we share our story for all ages. And that story is Walking Toward Peace, the true story of a brave woman called Peace Pilgrim. The world was weary with war. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman decided to walk. She had a good life. She enjoyed expensive dresses and fancy shoes. She liked her friends. But one evening, while taking a moonlit walk in the woods, she had a sudden and surprising thought. She didn't care about money anymore. What she really wanted was a life that mattered. She wanted to find a way to make the world better. Her greatest fear was that the country would fall into wartime chaos. But what could one person do about that? Into her mind came a map of the United States. She imagined a crayon as it drew a line from coast to coast. It gave her the idea to walk as a pilgrim for peace. She decided to give up her real name and everything she owned. Peace Pilgrim would be her new name, and her goal was to walk 25,000 miles. Step by step, she would make this pilgrimage happen, and somehow, in a country that could think only of war, she would spread peace. She took years to get ready. To master the skills she would need to survive, she spent many hours in the forest, practicing how to find food and find her way. Peace started within. As she prepared, she focused on good thoughts and good actions every day. She read to the elderly and helped tend their gardens. She worked with kids in trouble. She volunteered with groups that promoted peace. Finally, she was ready to walk. She celebrated New Year's Day by beginning her pilgrimage. Wearing simple sneakers and a blue shirt printed with her new name, she stepped out in front of the Rose Parade in Pasadena, California. As she walked, she talked to people along the parade route and handed out small printed messages asking everyone to consider peace. That was just the beginning. After the Rose Parade ended, Peace Pilgrim kept walking, one foot in front of the other. The pockets of her shirt held her only possessions: a toothbrush, a comb, a pen, copies of her message, and maps. She never carried money. Days passed, step by step. She walked joyfully, with purpose, and a ready smile. She would stop and talk anywhere, anytime, with anyone interested in her quest. She would explain her goal, a golden age of peace, a world with no fighting between people or nations. Some people worried. Did she know what she was doing? Was she an outlaw? But many who met her and talked with her were inspired. She spoke in a common-sense way, waking them up. So many people assumed war was a necessary part of life. Peace Pilgrim helped them see that another way might be possible. She preferred to walk on mountain trails, beaches, paths in the forest, quiet places where she could talk to a few people at a time. She cherished the beauty of nature, where every flower and tree seemed to glow, but when necessary, she walked alongside busy highways to get from place to place. As she walked through San Diego, she was invited to talk about peace at a school. This began her new life as a public speaker, sharing her message with many more people. But even then, as her audiences grew, she would move on and keep walking. There were always more people to meet, more people to talk to. More and more people wanted to listen. For a week in Colorado Springs, she talked to a dozen groups, from 5 people to 500 people. One day in Cincinnati, she gave 7 sermons at 7 different places of worship. She began to write back and forth with strangers who she made into friends, hundreds of them. For food, she often relied on kindness. Sometimes she dined at the fanciest hotel in town. Sometimes she enjoyed tortillas and beans at a migrant worker's home. Sometimes nature fed her with apples fallen from trees or wild berries dripping with dew. She gratefully accepted any offer of shelter. She would sleep on a front porch or the couch of a new friend. In Arizona, she spent one night on the City Hall conference table and another on the front seat of a fire engine. Other times, she slept at bus stops or truck stops or on the grass beside the road. One of her favorite places was a haystack under a blanket of stars. Step by step, Peace Pilgrim crossed from the West Coast to the East Coast, talking to people about peace everywhere she went. Nearly a year after her start in Pasadena, she made it to New York City. There she saw the United Nations building, home to the New World Peacekeeping Organization, and she spent her nights sleeping at the Grand Central train station. This was her first pilgrimage, but she wasn't finished. It would take much longer to reach her goal of 25,000 miles, so after rest and more preparation, she began anew. For her second pilgrimage, Peace Pilgrim, started from San Francisco. She tried to walk at least 100 miles and visit the capital in each state she visited. She also crossed into Mexico and Canada. Finally, in Washington, D.C., she succeeded. She had walked 25,000 miles, all to ask people to consider peace. After that, she stopped counting the miles, but she never stopped walking. Step by step, east and west, north and south, she zigzagged across the country. Like a bird, she traveled south in the fall, north in the spring. During walk after walk, she never got sick, seemed to have no fear, and was rarely in danger. Strangers continued to help. In freezing Oklahoma, a student gave her his gloves and scarf. On the coldest nights, she walked all night in order to keep warm. On the hottest days, she walked at night to stay cool, surrounded by fireflies, loving the smell of nature blossoming around her. She kept on walking through dust, storms, rainfall, and snowstorms. Peace Pilgrim made it to all 50 states. Supporters helped her get to Alaska, leading a tour that inspired many to return home and start working to help others. In Hawaii, she slept on the beach, cooked over campfires, and gathered people together to sing. On holidays, she would take a break and catch up on her mail. Greetings from South Dakota, she would write, or Iowa or Minnesota. She spent one Christmas in New Orleans and another in Fort Worth, Texas. Years passed by step, averaging 25 miles a day. She wore out 29 pairs of sneakers. How many miles can a person walk for peace? Though she stopped counting, Peace Pilgrim kept walking for 28 years. How many pilgrimages can one person make? She crisscrossed the country 7 times. Peace Pilgrim thought of walking as a prayer for peace. Everywhere she went, she invited people to act in ways that would make the world a more peaceful place. And step by step, they did. Each week, we gratefully accept your gifts of love and commitment. These gifts help sustain us and keep our doors open and the lights on. Thank you for these gifts. Please join us in our chorus number 402 from UUWC.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
In 1954, the UN declared September 21st as the International Day of Peace. Since then, there have been a number of wars and police actions around the world. Many of these police actions have been at the request of the UN in response to human rights violations and suspected genocides. We still have work to do to get to a sustainable, meaningful peace. Now, you may be wondering what war has to do with water. Maybe you thought we were going to look at how peaceful water can help us feel. As you looked at the pictures around the sanctuary, you may have thought they were beautiful places. And they are. However, some have also a violent history. The Seine River in Paris was an area of intense battlegrounds and bloody sieges in World War I. Normandy Beach looks different now than when the Allies landed there on June 6th. You may have recognized Pearl Harbor. That certainly looks different than late morning on December 7th. There is a river in Vietnam and the Kabul River as well. Several more are from a recent trip to Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks. These national parks are certainly peaceful now. However, before becoming protected lands, they quite possibly saw violence and rage wars and skirmishes between settlers and the tribes. Water has been used for warfare for thousands of years. Moving troops over water is much quicker than moving them over land. It is much harder to track someone in the water than on land. As well, water rights and restricted access to water has caused many a fight. Water is life, and the lack of water is death. Without water, there is famine. Without water, animals leave or die. Without water, people die from dehydration. Without water, Without access to clean water, people get sick and die. If we travel back through history, we can see the impact of water on humans. In the 1980s, the news was dominated by heartbreaking stories of horrible famines throughout Africa. People were starving and dying. Water was scarce, and those who had control of it had a better chance of survival. Civil wars broke out, countries changed rulers and names, and genocides happened. One of the quickest ways to convince humans to do inhumane things is to convince them that it is the only thing that will save their families and countries. Take a moment to think about what you would do to save your child. Vietnam was a war that utilized rivers to move. The Viet Cong had tunnels everywhere, and the Americans preferred using the rivers to hide movements of small units like Navy SEALs, Recon Marines, and Green Berets. The Navy deployed the Brown Water Navy to support these units as they patrolled the rivers. World War II had German U-boats throughout the Atlantic, including just off the eastern seaboard of the United States. And the Japanese had been taking over Pacific Islands, leading up to the attack on Pearl Harbor. That attack was supposed to cripple our Pacific fleet so that we couldn't stop Japan. The Navy created a new unit to get rid of underwater mines that would cause a lot of damage to U.S. ships. On the European front, these were NCDU units, and in the Pacific theater, they were underwater demolition teams. These undersea divers would eventually become known as SEALs. They swam in underwater and unarmed to disable those mines so that the Marines could land. The Pacific theater was predominantly a war fought at sea and on islands. Without ships, Dunkirk couldn't have been evacuated, and the loss of Allied troops would have been catastrophic. Without ships and amphibious watercraft, the Allies couldn't have landed on Normandy on June 6th. Large ships were needed by the U.S. in 1917 and again in 1919 to get millions of troops to Europe to fight in World War I and then get them back home. The western United States saw lots of conflicts as settlers moved west. Many of them were fleeing the ruins of the Civil War. This westward movement led to many battles with tribes who called this land home before they were moved to reservations with poor land and limited water. Cattle ranchers preferred large open range and open access to water, and sheep ranchers preferred closed land and limited water access. Cattle ranchers hated the sheep because cattle couldn't graze where sheep had grazed, as sheep left little to graze. As water became harder to access due to fences and dams, violence became the answer. Part of the plan to defeat the Confederacy was to blockade the Gulf and ocean to prevent cotton and other goods from being exported to Europe to fund the Confederacy, as well as preventing goods from reaching the people in the South. The second part of the plan was to go down the Mississippi and take control of key cities along the way. Most of us learned about Gettysburg, Vicksburg, Bull Run, Fort Sumter in history class, and I certainly remember hearing about a fierce battle between the Monitor and the Merrimack as well. The War of 1812 was caused in part by the British Navy's insistence on stopping American ships and taking sailors at gunpoint to force them to serve in the British Navy. Now, this young American experiment did not have a navy that was truly capable of taking on the British Navy. No other country did. What we did have was a number of pilots with strongholds throughout the South, especially in Florida and New Orleans. Part of the solution was to give these pirates letters of marque, giving them legal right to attack British ships. During the Revolutionary War, one of the very few advantages that the Continental Army had over the British troops was knowledge of the swamplands and how to move through them. The British understood having a large fighting force and moving in cumbersome formations, while the Americans understood the impact of smaller forces engaging in hit-and-run skirmishes and disappearing into the marshy areas. This allowed them to hold out long enough for the French to decide to help us. If we go back to Europe, we see the rise of two powerful naval forces, the British Navy and the Spanish Armada. Their sea battles were historic. The desire in Europe to have a more direct and shorter route to the east for spices and perfumes led to monarchs sending out adventurous sea captains to find and control these new routes. This led to the colonization of the Americas, Africa, India, New Zealand, and Australia. Before the Brits and the Spaniards, the most feared on the seas were the Vikings. The Romans, Greeks, Egyptians, and Phoenicians all used ships to reach other lands. Lighthouses became important structures on coastlines. The first known naval battle is said to have taken place in 1210 BC between the Hittites and a fleet from Cyprus. The Hittites were victorious, and the remaining ships from the Cyprus fleet were burned at sea. Think back to our moment for centering. Standing Rock are just one of many First Nations fighting for water rights against big oil companies wanting to run pipelines through the land. Many of these companies have had past issues with oil leaks, the black snake polluting and destroying precious water. Their desire to practice seven-generation thinking, as their ancestors did, is at odds with the desire to make large amounts of money stripping the earth of its resources. The water rights of sovereign nations is at odds with company greed. Unfortunately, we once again saw politicians trying to nullify a treaty made with the tribes. We saw water protectors fired upon with rubber bullets, caged, and the use of water cannons in freezing weather. The people continue to fight and stand. They are fighting for the water needed today and for the next 7 generations of their descendants. I have no answers, only questions. How do we protect the right to have access to clean water over the desire of a few to continue to strip our earth of our resources for profit? How do we begin to honor the peacemakers instead of the generals? How do we stop defining family by the wars they fought in or the wars they were in between? How do we put an end to war, find meaningful peace that works for everyone and not just the force that has the deadliest weapons? How do we begin to redefine a person's worth without regard to power, status, creed, color, gender, and who we love? How do we find our way to looking at beautiful vistas, water and stars without thought of how we can monetize them? I would love to hear your thoughts. If you raise your hand, Sherry will bring you the mic.
I don't know how true it is, but in the year 1940, 1945, I had a little piece published in the New York Herald Tribune that said, economic security is a prerequisite to world peace. And I still think that that might be true, and I wish it would happen.
All right. Please stand as you are able and join us in singing Let There Be Peace on Earth. The words are in your program. There we go. And please join in the singing, because otherwise you're going to have to listen to me and you're not going to enjoy me nearly as much as my babies do.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With earth as our mother, family are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my song now. To take each moment and live each moment with peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Please join us in extinguishing our chalice flame. The words are in your program. We extinguish our chalice flame, but not our thirst for life-giving water, and our desire for lasting peace. Shalom. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the infinite peace to you. Please join us in our closing song, Go Now in Peace.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Please head into the social hall. I do believe we're having a town hall meeting today.